Hello everyone and welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, the show where I review something that's mostly pretty good, maybe one of the best movies of all time, or a film that absolutely sucks and should remain in the depths of hell. Now, last week we obviously discussed the original, A Nightmare on Elm Street, released in 1984, and it was a really great start for me this year for Halloween. And then I realized that the next week was going to be a little difficult for me, kind of, but I pressed forward with it, and we got the video. Hopefully, we're getting the video out right now. The reason why is because this is something that I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of backlash for, probably. But fuck it, it's my channel, so really I don't give a shit. Also, if you're asking why I have my headset on actually this time instead of like out of frame, like I usually do now, basically I just have a lot of people over now, and it's getting kind of loud a bit. So, and I feel like if I have it right here, you'll probably hear the background noise more than myself. So I'm just gonna not risk it and just have it on my head for this video. Hopefully by next week we can have it to the normal setup. Anyway, so you guys remember that all the way back at the beginning of this series, like episode 2 or 3, I discussed the etching. I might as well grab it real quick. But yeah, no, back in 2018, 2019, I think more 2019, back at the very beginning of this series, I discussed the 1990 version of Stephen King's It, which I do plan on redoing at some point. I'm probably going to wait until next year to do it on, because obviously I have the rest of this year planned out. But needless to say, I thought that this was a very good adaptation of the story for a TV version that has to be around 3 hours long and has, you can't really go too far with it. I thought that it was a very good, adaptation of the original source material. So when I heard that, obviously before I did the review, obviously, because that was 2019. After when I figured out about this one, and me hearing that they were going to do a film adaptation, like an actual film adaptation, and not the, with this one where it technically counts as the film, but it's more accurate, a TV miniseries, I was a bit skeptical, because I'm like, okay, well, the book is about 1,100 pages, and they barely got most of the details into a 3-hour TV miniseries. So how the hell can you fit it into a 2-hour running movie? Well, needless to say, I was a bit surprised when the reviews came out for the 2017 version of it, and I realized, well, yeah, it makes sense. This is not the full story, which we'll get to later. But yeah, I will be discussing the 2017 version of it and comparing it to the original version as far as as the films go. So basically, I would say the first hour and a half of the TV miniseries versus the 2017 film. But it is mostly going to be a review of the film itself, and not the main part of the review being the comparison, because that would just be stupid, and that would honestly preferably be a video on its own, but I'm not going to do that. But yeah, let's go on and talk about the 2017 version of it. So this was released on September 8th of 2017. This had a budget of only $35 million. Domestically, it made over about $330 million, and worldwide, it made over $700 million. So this was a box office smash, and I believe that critics at the time were raving about this film, being like, oh my god, it's so scary. And I'm like, I'm not too much into it, because this was back when I was not. I mean, I'm still not, but I was a real fucking stickler for new movies, especially ones where it's like, okay, well, now you're really just like picking off, like you're running out of ideas at this point. Um, but then obviously it came out that this was not a remake of the 1990 version. This was just going to be a straight up adaptation of the book, like the 1990 version tried to do and kind of failed. Let's be honest here. Um, but yeah, so this was not going to be a remake, but more or less a film adaptation, which I was like, okay, so you're not really putting it into that same park of like, okay, it's going to be a remake, so it's probably going to suck. But it still didn't help my hesitations really about could this film suck? Because for me personally, most horror movies nowadays, they just use the same old cliches of just jump scares to your face. And yeah, this film kind of does have that, but it kind of does work, and I'll get to that later. This was directed by a guy named, I'm probably going to butcher this, Andris Muschietti. And again, most likely butchered it. I never heard of this director before, and it kind of makes sense why, because needless to say, the pre-production for this film was kind of hell. They went through so many directors, so many producers, so many versions of the script that they couldn't just gel on one way of going about it, and then they finally got, somewhat the right director and then pushed it out into theaters. So it's honestly kind of a miracle that this film really ever came out, considering the fact that, yeah, if you look into the behind the scenes of this film, not of the actual like production itself, like I think production actually for this film went pretty smoothly. The pre-production though, it was a living hell. So yeah, but yeah, obviously back then I was a big skeptic. Like, is this really gonna work? And obviously the film was successful enough to get a sequel, which grandly with that, I think it was more just like, okay, well, even if the first one bombs, we're still gonna make a sequel because this story needs to continue. So I don't really think that the box office probably would have hurt it that much. Grandly though, I think the sequel came out like 2 years after this one came out, so it might have, but I'm just saying from the perception of this film being a two-parter, or yeah, more or less, it feels like that they didn't, like, they were like, okay, well, even if this film does bomb, we're still gonna make a sequel because the story does need to continue, which is actually kind of what happened with the Dune remake, but that's a whole different discussion. So, you know probably the gist of the It story, but in case you haven't, 7 young outcasts in Derry, Maine are about to face their worst nightmare, an ancient shape-shifting evil that emerges from the sewers after 27 years to prey on the town's children. Boarding, Barding together over the course of this one horrifying summer, the friends must overcome their own personal fears to battle the murderous, bloodthirsty clown known as Pennywise. So, yeah, basically same gist as the book and the original 1991. So, what's so different about it? Well, considering the fact that, unlike this version, it's only the kid's story. And what I mean by that, basically, if you guys haven't heard of this film, which should be kind of weird, this is all about the first part, like the first half of the novel, where basically it's all about the kids in the 1980s, where, I mean, even showing it off back there, they are all kids back in, summer of, I think it's the summer of '89. So, it does work in that sense, because it's like it considering the fact that this is I think it's 2 hours, 135 minutes. So like 2 hours and 25 minutes, I think. So, actually no, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, that I think that actually does work in the film's benefit compared to the original, because you only get like an hour and a half with each side of the story, and you get cut up with an ad break where you're probably going to forget, like, oh, what happened to this character and this character? Whereas this film, it's like, you know, all of the events that happen to these kids happens in one film over a span of 2 hours. That is very good and allows the children's arc, or the children's aspect of the story, to breathe more and to have, more substance, instead of just being like I will admit, though, even though the child actors in the original are very memorable and do very good with their parts, it did kind of feel like they were just, okay, we have to get the backstories out of the way initially so that we can, introduce the adults for the second part. But this film, it's like, okay, let's actually flesh these characters out. Let's make them likable, and let's make them enjoyable to watch. And I'm not saying that the 1981 didn't do that either. It just feels a little bit more rushed compared to this film, where it's a lot more spread out and a lot more, has a lot more time to breathe with each scene, with each character. So I really do like that. Although, granted, they still omit a few scenes from the novel, some better than others, which, if you guys have read the book, or at least know about it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I shall not bring it up in this video, because I do not want this video to get demonetized. But needless to say, if you know what happened to the book, you know why they cut it out of the film. Needless to say. But that's what I like about this film, is that even if, I knew going into this film, if I did not like it over the kids aspect of the original 1991, I would still appreciate it for actually giving them a lot more time to breathe out and, improve upon the story that the 1991 didn't really do. So, I did like that aspect. On the other hand, though, this film relies way too much on jump scares. And I know, if you guys have seen criticisms of this film, you guys know that jump scares was one of the big issues with it. But it does have to be said that this is around the time when horror movies that were where studios were like, okay, how do we make good horror movies? Okay, I got it. Let's just throw jump scares in the people's faces. That will sell it to them. No, it doesn't. Horror movies work when you have good characters and a good villain clashing with each other. Or a good killer, I should say, not a good villain. A good killer hunting these guys down, and that you can understand the dynamic. And, it's not just... Because... I mean, granted, I could say the very same thing about slasher movies of the 80s, but at least those ones are still memorable, and we can still remember them. Honestly, now, if you ask me to name anything that happens in any of the Paranormal Activity movies, I couldn't even remember any of the characters' names. It's that forgettable. Final Destination, granted, the first one did a very good job, and it's one of the films that actually does succeed with that formula and being in the 2000s, 2010 era. 2 was okay, 3 it started to go downhill, and then 4 and 5 are just shit. So I knew going into this film that there was gonna be jump scares, and kind of in your face, but I didn't expect the over a mountains of them, just shoving them in your face, basically saying, "Oh, jump scares, jump scares, jump scares." That's gonna work. No, it doesn't. And that's actually why this is one area that I do prefer the 1991 over this one, because the horror is in the suspense in this film, whereas the 2017 one is jump scares, which, yeah, it can work for certain situations, but when you keep on plastering it in our fucking faces, it doesn't work, and it gets dry, and it gets bullshit. And then people start to not like it, and then you get backlash. And I will admit, yeah, some of the scenes in the 1991 are over the top as hell. But that's why I like it. But also at the same time, this film does not. I think I can honestly recall maybe one or two actual jump scares in this one. The rest of the horror in this film is the suspense and the terror of it. Whereas this film, it thinks terror, or no, they think that jump scares equals terror, and that does not work at all. Well, it can work, but like I said earlier, when you keep on plastering it and shoving it in our faces, it gets dry very quickly, and it doesn't fucking work. Which is why I'm gonna actually, you know what? I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think that as a film overall, this one is slightly weaker than the It 1991. And I'm not saying that this film is a bad film overall. I'm not saying that. There are certainly some parts about the 2017 one that certainly improve a lot about what they couldn't do in the 1991. But overall, this film just feels like I shouldn't say cash-in, because that's not what this is. It really isn't. But this film just feels like we need to make a new version of it, but we also have to keep up with the times in horror. So let's mix the two together, and we'll see if it works. And for me, it really doesn't. But there are some scares in it that I do like. And the characters are very nice, and they work. So that's why I would like that. That's really the only reason why I would ever come back. I'll wait on that one. So it's kind of hard to talk about it really when it's like, because there are so many different aspects that you have to when you talk about it, it's like, fuck, well, now I gotta compare the two. And it's like, well, then I don't want to, and then it's like, well, fuck, I might as well. I think the biggest comparison, the biggest comparison I can make between the two films is Pennywise itself. And if anyone has seen this film, I know the backlash is coming right for me. But let's get into it. So, Pennywise in this film is played by Bill Skarsgård. He does I think he does great with this interpretation of Pennywise, where it's the more creepier side of Pennywise, where he does play it up as a demon who wants to hunt down children for the fear and the pleasure of it. But, and this is a very big but, even though Bill Skarsgård does a very good creepy performance, it's not scary for me. What do I mean by this? Well, let's take Tim Curry's impression from the 1991. Yes, he is over the top as hell. And you really can't stop to, like, actually think, like, oh, wow, this guy's actually kind of scary, because you're probably going to keep on laughing at these jokes that he's making. But the thing is that when he's not making jokes, he is overall nice and, like, inviting. And that's what gets me more. Because the thing is that really before the It book came out, everyone was like, oh, clowns are okay. But then the book, and especially for me, this film made me realize that clowns, yeah, they could be nice on the outside, but secretly they could be fucking scary. And like I said, the reason why I think that Tim Curry does better than Bill Skarsgård is because he actually does act like a clown. Like he's open, he's warming, he's inviting, he cracks jokes, and that's the perfect incentive for a little child, like, for example, Georgie at the beginning of the film, to go, okay, he may be not that bad. I mean, granted, he's a fucking stranger, so you shouldn't be trusting him at all. But I can understand why Georgie would go for Tim Curry's Pennywise more because he's more open. Like I'm Mr. Jokester, whereas Bill Skarsgård is just that creepy ass guy that you see down in the alleyway, and you're just like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't go towards him. And then you like when you go towards him, he's all creepy and like eerie and shit like that, trying to scare you. That's what this Pennywise feels like. And again, I'm not saying that the performance of Bill Skarsgård is bad. He does pull off the very creepy performance, and I do like that so much. It's just the fact of Tim Curry, for me personally, works better because it's really I will act like a normal person and a normal clown to like get these kids' guards down, so that I could be like, okay, surprise attack, chomp you down. Whereas Bill Skarsgård, I hear him talking, and I'm like, bitch, stay the fuck away from me. I don't care if you look like a clown or not. You are creepy as fuck. I'm out. And that's actually a very good point that the Nostalgia Critic, when he reviewed the 2017 It, brought up. Is that Tim Curry, like, basically what I said. He's funny, but, like, he can also play up to the fact that, you know, he is a clown. And that's what gets the children to be like, oh, he's all Mr. Nice. And then, yoink, no. But Bill Skarsgård, you see him in a fucking sewer pop-up, and you're like, nope. Boom, you're off. So, it really doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense because the only reason why the kids in the 2017 one, follow him, because it's like it has to go along with the plot. But just saying, when, like, it just seems like Skarsgård is more, like, trying to act creepy, whereas Tim Curry's Pennywise is actually fucking creepy. Because it's like, he's trying to get your guard down so that he can chew you up. Whereas Skarsgård, it's just like, I'm gonna, maybe not intentionally, but I just see it as like, oh, like, I'm trying to be a clown, but I'm also more, I'm more of the demon that's coming out, so it's like combating the two personas, whereas Tim Curry's Pennywise is, it's like more threatening because it's more, what's the word? It's more fucking, unnoticeable when you're a kid, because it's like, oh, he's a clown. Yoink. And then they're gone. So, for me personally, Tim Curry is the better Pennywise, but I still really do appreciate Bill Skarsgård's impersonation, or no, his attempt at the role, because it is still very fucking creepy. And, maybe that's why they're posting up, Pennywise shirts all over the place, because they know that once you see that shirt in the fucking store, it's like, what the fuck is the clown at? And I think that's what gets people nowadays. And like I said, the rest of the Losers Club in this film are fine. Obviously, the biggest one out of all of them is Finn Wolfhard, who plays Richie Tozier, who same year, I think, either the year before or the year after this movie came out, he would go to star in the wonderfully acclaimed and, one of the most popular Netflix series of all time, Stranger Things. So, I just see his character in Stranger Things. I'm like, that's just Richie. That's just Richie Tozier. And I watch his performance in it. I'm like, that's the kid from Stranger Things. So it's like, it's so, it's so like similar, where it's like, hey, it's Finn Wolfhard. So, and then the last person I actually want to talk about for the cast is Nicholas Hamilton as Henry Bowers. Now, this is something that I actually have to give credit to the remake over the original. I'm just gonna say this right now. I prefer Henry in this film than the 2017 one, because the thing about the 1990 Henry Bowers is that he just seems like a generic school bully from like the 80s and 90s. So he's not that threatening. So it's just like once Swift kicked the nuts and he's down, and then the rest of the goons are like, oh fuck, we got to bounce. But Henry Bowers in this film is actually terrifying because he's a bully. Obviously, that's his character. But the path that he goes down in this film is actually kind of crazy, and it improves so much on Henry Bowers' character that it makes, the 1991 look like a complete farce. So, obviously, like I said, Henry Bowers is a bully to, like, basically all the Losers Club. That's his character trait. But then there's, like, scenes throughout where he's, like, where it shows why he's like that. Because in the 1991, we never get that. We just get, oh, he's the bully. But in this film, we see that, one is that in the scene where he tries to carve his name into Ben's stomach and he falls over, Henry actually falls over the side too and loses his knife, which supposedly belongs to his father. So he's like, shit, I lost my knife. And so he sends two of the goons to go after Ben, and then lets another one stay. So it's like, help me find this knife, or else my father's gonna be pissed at me. So he's like, okay, so he's not two-dimensional bully. He's, like, actually, like, kind of like a full-fledged character. And then towards the end of the film, we get a lot more character from Henry, where we see him and his gang in the backyard of his house playing with a gun, and, like, they're shooting cans and shit. And then they find this, like, stray cat, and Henry's like, all right, put him up there, I'm gonna shoot it. And I don't know if any of the the loonies that are right there are like, yo, like, should we not shoot this fucking cat? And, like, not, because this might be going too far. But obviously the dad shows up, and it's like, and he grabs the gun out of from Henry's hands and then, like, shoots around him, and it's like, oh, that's why he's the fucking, that's why he's the bully, because his dad is a psychotic bastard. And then after that, fucking Pennywise shows up to Henry and gives him the knife that he lost, which belongs to his dad. And this is like the scene where fucking Henry just breaks and just goes psychotic, because he after he opens up the box and finds the knife in there, he goes into his dad's house, and his dad is sleeping on the couch, because of course. And this is no. Oh, I thought I crashed for a second. I don't get why they decided. I don't get why there's like a nursery program on the fucking TV when it's his dad watching it. Like, what the fuck is his dad into? But then, like, the TV starts, like, trying to talk to Henry, like basically giving instructions like, kill him. So he holds the knife up to his dad's neck, and then he just whoosh, and then you see the dad's face like, oh fuck, and then he just, like, grabs his head and just holds him down as he's cutting more into his neck, and he just, like, fucking just kills him viciously. And then, like, the teacher stands up, and as she's walking away, you just see Pennywise sitting there as the kids are just shouting, like, kill them, and you just see Pennywise do his fucking shit-eating grin, like, like that one, right there, and, then he goes after the rest of the gang, because at this point, Pennywise has captured Beverly and taken her to the sewers. And obviously the rest of the Losers Club is like, all right, well, fuck this. We're going to go after him. And apparently there's a whole bunch of deleted scenes from this film that got cut out. And one of them was actually a very crucial one, is when the Losers, like, all all the rest of the Losers Club arrive at the house and like, all right, let's do this. And then we see Henry's car in the background, and we see him like all like covered in blood, and he's like da 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 da. He's talking, and then he turns over, and his two gang members have their throats slit. And supposedly in the deleted scene, Henry went to their houses like to like get them to go, and then when they, I haven't checked them out exactly on this because I don't know if it's on the Blu-ray and the 4K or if it's just the 4K that has it, but I mean I could probably easily find them on YouTube anyway. But so yeah, basically Henry gets his two gangs, his two gang members, and then he kills them, like either in the car. I'm presuming in the car. And then he arrives at the house and then goes fucking batshit insane when all of the Losers Club are climbing down and find this hole in the well. Mike is the last one to go down, and then Henry comes down and fucking starts fighting him, and like I think he's about to, because Mike brings his like nail gun to the house. So when he's fighting him, Mike grabs the gun and he's about to shoot him, and then he fucking grabs it right before he shoots it, and it's like oh fuck, that was close. And then I think Mike bashes him overhead with a fucking rock, and then like fucking just tackles him into the well, and then Henry just falls down. And supposedly that's what I think when the film came out, people were like, wait, is Henry dead? Like, because no person should theoretically survive a well, like falling down a well that's that fucking deep. But spoilers for part 2, which granted it really isn't a spoiler since this happened in both the book and the 1991. He returns as an adult in like when all the Losers Club are about to refight Pennywise. But yeah, it's like that's actually a new. I don't know if that's actually in like that character arc for Henry is in the book. Because I know it certainly is not in the 1991. So if this is actually an innovation of the film, that's like really good on the filmmakers. Like, good job. And that's pretty much about it. So, I guess favorite scenes. Really, the only thing I can remember, honestly, from this film. I mean, it's not bad, but it's like, it's just like, kind of like, it's kind of just average. So I just kind of was just like trying to pay attention to it, but couldn't really. So the only thing I really remember from this film is the end fight with all the Losers Club and Pennywise, because it's like he's playing into all their fears, and then that one shot or that one scene when he turns into Georgie and he's like, I forgive you for leaving me and shit, and then he just Ben just pulls up that, or not Ben, Bill pulls up the nail gun and he just shoots him in the head, and I'm like, did he just kill his own younger brother? Like, it was so seamless, like, oh my fuck. But obviously, it's not. And he's like, and he's twitching, and then he turns into Pennywise. So, yeah. To move on to the fun facts. So Jack Dylan Grazer, who plays Eddie, he was actually the first child actor to work with Bill Skarsgård, which is the I think it's the one scene when they enter the house and then he falls backwards and he lands on like a kitchen table, and he has his arm broken, and then Pennywise like crawls out of the fridge, and he's like yelling at him while also intimidating him. During that scene, Jack started to cry and like gag because like just of how good Bill's performance was. And then Bill was like, "Oh shit!" And he was genuinely concerned for the actor. And then after the scene, he was like, "Yo, like, are you okay?" And then Jack just turns around and responds. he just responded to Bill, "Love what you're doing with the character." Bill was apparently so confused, but like he was so like confused, but then he was also impressed. Like, damn, like, these kids could go for like a lot. And then I think he went on to go and say they were the true actors of the movie and not him, which is like, yeah, it's kind of true. The second fun fact was Jackson Ray Tyler, or no, Jackson Robert Scott, who plays Georgie. He was the youngest one out of all the cast members, so you would think he would probably be at least be a little bit more scared than the rest of the actors or the rest of the child actors. Fuck no, he wasn't even phased or even scared by Bill's performance, and he would go on to say that he actually had a lot of fun doing his scenes, and he thought that, you know, he just said like, and he said like it was fun to see Bill play around as Pennywise. So he didn't even really see it as like, oh my fuck, it's that fucking clown. He was like, oh, it's Bill just dressed up as a clown. So I guess that's a really the good mindset around it, or for one of these films to get into it and just be like, yeah, it's just, you know, it's just George as a clown. Yeah, he's technically playing Pennywise, but it's just for me, it's just George as a clown. So that, you know, you don't feel too scared by it, but you can still pull off a great performance. Last thing before we get on to the final part is the score, done by a guy named Benjamin Wallfrisk. It's all right. It's kind of just like one of your typical like horror scores nowadays, and it works for the film, but I wouldn't go back and listen to it by itself. But like I said, it works for the context of the film. So, final thoughts on the 2017 version of It. It's okay. It's not good, but it's not bad either. It's straight down the middle for me. Although, grandly, it does have a lot of good scenes about it, and it does elevate it a bit, but if I have to be honest, comparing it to the 1991, this one's better compared to the 2017 version. And I know that shouldn't really count, because this film is about 3 hours long and is basically their entire story, whereas this film is about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it's only the child's side, like the child section of the film. But even if we're just counting the child sections of both, I would still prefer the original. The kid actors are better in the 1990 version compared to the 2017 version for me. Pennywise is way better in the 1991 than in the 2017 one. Henry Bowers, I will admit, is better in the 2017 one than the 1991. But overall, if someone says, hey, which version of It do you want to watch, I would always go for the 1991, because it's the one that I technically grew up with, and it's the one that I always will remember. The 2017 one just seems like Hollywood just like, yeah, we need to make a film adaptation of it, so let's pump it out and then make a sequel 2 years later, which I do plan on discussing maybe, hopefully next year in Halloween. But not this year, since I don't have it and I don't have a way of streaming it. So, yeah. So, speaking of which, the reason why I have the 4K of this is because it was like $10 at Walmart on Black Friday. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, this 4K does not really come with much. And the worst part is that it doesn't even specify like which disc it's on. So I don't know whether or not this is all on the 4K or on the Blu-ray or on both. So all we have really is Pennywise Lives, basically just talking about how Bill Skarsgård prepared for the role of Pennywise. The Losers Club, basically just with all the just getting to understand how all the teen stars managed to fit in with the characters. Author of Fear, basically Stephen King reveals the roots of his story, and Basically, him talking about the novel and then the deleted scenes. So, like I said, I don't know which disc it's on, either the regular Blu-ray or the 4K. And if it's on the 4K disc, then I'm kind of screwed because I don't technically have a 4K player right now. I only have a 4K upscaler player, so yeah, that kind of sucks. Anyway, that was my review on the 2017 version of It. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Also, comment down below what you guys think of the new Halloween intro that I added at the beginning of this review. I kind of forgot to mention that earlier. And I will be having a new end card at the end of this review, so I'll comment about that one as well. Stay tuned for next week, where I'll be discussing The Fly, released in 1958. And yeah, so make sure to follow me on my social media pages in the description below. My Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter. That's when you get notified when new videos are coming out. Also, hopefully this should be in the description below. Go and follow me on my Letterbox. Go follow me on Letterbox, because that will have short, brief reviews on on films as well. And in case like you don't have time to watch like one of my in-depth reviews, you can go onto my Letterbox page and then go to like my review on for example, this version of It, and you'd be like, oh, here's what he thought about it, and then you can just read up on it instead of watching a 40+ minute review when you don't have the time. But yeah, also yeah, follow me on my Twitch page, because I'm gonna be doing some occasional live streams every once in a while, and that's pretty much it, I think. So yeah, stay tuned for next week for my review on The Fly from 1958. Live long and prosper. Out.